A radio show host in Seattle called Paul Gallant.
You are definitely living in the hindsight world today, Paul.
Do you feel there's been a consistent theme with the interceptions?
I think every interception really has a different story.
I was just kind of curious what Paul gets to see.
You got f***ing grow, mother. Are you kidding me?
Paul Gallant, what the hell is wrong with you?
Hello and welcome aboard another episode of the Gallant Says podcast on this Tuesday, February 7th of 2023. I am Paul Gallant. This thing airs live on twitch.tv/Gallant Says and youtube.com/Paul Gallant, weekdays 1 to 1:30 Central Time. So for those who don't watch the show, you listen instead. I decided a couple of weeks ago to just shave off my beard entirely. I had not completely shaven my face since 2017. And we're talking mid-November of 2017, after the Astros had won the World Series for the first time. Kept it going, let it grow out super thick at one point. Last year or so, it's been a little bit shorter. I just thought to myself a couple of weeks ago, you know what? Fuck it. Let's change it up. It's been a while. I'm constantly scratching my face. What's it going to be like to be completely clean shaven? And when you change your look, especially when you change your face's look, people will notice. Was I doing it because I'm a bit of an attention whore? Maybe. I gotta say, the attention has been delivered. I have found it pretty interesting over the last couple of weeks, the wide range of people who have weighed in. Most people have said that you look incredibly young with your face shape. Maybe that's what I was going for as a 33-year-old with a little bit more gray in his beard than he would have liked. Some people are saying, though, that they missed the beard. They missed that little mustache phase that I had last month. And I guess the most specific example of this was yesterday. Check that. Today, as I was leaving the radio station to come back here, someone who works for our company, who's a wonderful person, who yesterday had said, wow, you've got such a baby face. She told me I should grow it back. And then she said, look, women are looking for older looking men. And she went off on a bit of a diatribe about it. And she was trying to not be offensive. And I didn't take any offense to it. I listen to people, whatever they have a take on it. But I found it interesting that people have had so many takes on my face and what to do with it. I've had takes on what my parents should do with their looks back in the day. I suppose that's the closest thing I could go to this. One time when I was 5, my mom cut her hair to be really short. And me, being a little bastard, even though I was 5 years old, without a filter, asked her, Mom, when will you be pretty again? I still feel bad about that. But maybe I should leave it up to you guys as to what I should do with my face. Should I go mustache again? Should I go full beard again? Scruff? Or clean shaven? Maybe I'll put it up on Twitter. Maybe I should go for a different kind of look entirely. Cowboy hat guy? Could I pull that off? Vest guy? Rides his bicycle and takes it far too seriously guy? Get one of those aerodynamic helmets? Speedo suit? What should I do? I'll leave that up. You could contribute on social media, which, speaking of social media, I hate it. There's not one moment that I have enjoyed being on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, hell, TikTok over the last year. Every single day I use it, I realize how much it fucking sucks. I'd much rather live in the real world. And I feel like anything that I put out in written form, it's not the same as me saying it. So to go on one of these apps and just continuously see the anger, vitriol over really stupid shit, the very small, non-expansive takes on all sorts of things without any background as to why, any reasoning, just 280 characters or less. It's just not good, especially for discourse. And I think Twitter is the absolute worst for it. Life and Sports Talk with Jake says, LeBron's breaking the record today. If you have 100,000, you can witness it, LOL. What are you talking about, like breaking Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record? I guess I just don't care. Maybe I should. He's played for a really long time. It's a tremendous accomplishment, but I do think it's kind of amusing that it's taking place the same week as the Super Bowl. People don't really start paying attention to basketball until really after the Super Bowl's played. I would say around the All-Star break and the trade deadline. It is interesting that the trade deadline is the week of the Super Bowl. Anyway, I want to do a new segment on the Gallant Says podcast, and I was trending towards that right now. I'm going to call it Twitter is Terrible Tuesday. Twitter has not improved since Elon Musk purchased it. I don't think any of us should have really expected it to improve. I suppose there's a little more free speech going on for conservative voices out there and for others who have maybe been silenced for having opinions on things or reporting facts on things that were, I guess, too strong against the grain, specifically during the pandemic. But now it's been streamlined in a way where you have multiple feeds on Twitter. You have one that is for you, and then you have one of people you're following. Twitter defaults to looking at for you. And I think that it has realized that there are certain accounts that I see and I hate, and I'll click on their accounts and just hate read them. Doing exactly the thing that I tell people not to do, which is to not get sucked into a rabbit hole on Twitter. So I figured something that we could do going forward on Tuesdays as a weekly feature on the Gallant Says podcast is just highlighting what a fucking hellscape piece of shit Twitter really is. And the kinds of, I hate to get personal, but the vultures who take advantage of this fucking hellscape. So the subject of today is an account on Twitter that is called @BrooklynDad_Defiant. @MMPADELLAN. He's got a blue check mark. It's a legacy verified account. It may or may not be notable. He's also got a purple peace sign up. His Twitter reads, the profile, Proud Papa, perpetually pissed. #Blue Wave 2024. #feminist. Author of The Littlest President. Senior advisor for a Twitter account called Really American One, a grassroots political organization and media producing the most impactful political content on a daily basis. Join us. As you'll come to find out when you take a look at this guy's Twitter, this is not somebody who is actually adding to the discourse or making us better when it comes to being logical thinkers about things that maybe aren't our opinion. I'm a big believer that maybe every opinion doesn't matter. Maybe I'm not going to go that far because there are some bad fucking opinions out there. But I like to hear other people's perspectives. And I'm not going to dump on this guy's Twitter avatar, which does make him look about as hipster as it gets. It's a selfie of him in a leather jacket with his very nice beard, might I add, and a beanie. I'm not going to get personal. I want to become better. Because my natural reaction is I see this guy's account and I'm like, fuck this guy. But it's mainly because of the tweets that I see from him, which I feel like are divisive and don't make us actually better as thinkers. I think it makes our country worse. So I'm going to take a look at a tweet that first put this guy on my radar. He tweeted, in a world full of Kyle Rittenhouses, B.A. Brandon Say. So Brandon Say, for those who don't know, is a man who, and there's video of it, without a gun, ballsily disarmed somebody who I think was in the midst of a mass shooting. Talk about the balls on that guy. But then you have this tweet from Brooklyn Dad _ Defiant. In a world full of Kyle Rittenhouses, be a Brandon Say. Is the world full of Kyle Rittenhouses? There is a Kyle Rittenhouse. We talked about Kyle Rittenhouse on this podcast about a year ago. The coverage of Kyle Rittenhouse, a person who, in the midst of rioting in Wisconsin, for whatever reason, felt the need to arm himself and walk up and down the street, got into a situation where 3 people attacked him, and he defended himself with said gun. Is it weird that he went over there with an assault rifle to defend things? Yes, because it wasn't his property. He felt the need to defend his community. Whatever. Young person. The people that attacked him didn't have the best records. I think if you watch the video, you could see the guy was trying to defend himself. And we spent a couple of years watching this guy get slandered without him telling his side of the story. But to go back to this tweet, in a world full of Kyle Rittenhouses, be a Brandon Say. First, I don't think that the world is full of Kyle Rittenhouses, people who would get an assault rifle and go to a city that is not theirs to defend property there. I also don't think that person would generally be attacked by multiple people. So we have a very extenuating circumstance here. And this tweet essentially is saying, if you don't have a gun and you try to stop someone with a gun, you're great. And you know what? If you actually pull it off, you are great. But this is probably, I don't know, fucking stupid to try to disarm somebody that has a gun. I would advise against it, unless you really feel like you could stop that person. So it's one of those tweets that you see out there that's clearly pandering to a very specific audience and is designed to get his echo chamber riled up. And instead of talking about Brandon Say, you're also going to make the comparison of him to Kyle Rittenhouse. Does Brandon Say want that? No. Brandon Say found himself in a crazy situation and did an incredibly heroic thing. So this is how this guy first got on my radar on this Twitter is Terrible Tuesday. Then I saw a tweet that he had on Friday while I was going to the Houston Rockets game. He tweeted out, who is a bigger threat to America, Trump or Ron DeSantis? Look, I didn't vote for Trump. I don't think I'm capable of voting for Trump. Not to act like that's some grandstand. That's just how I personally believe. I think he's kind of embarrassing with the way that he acts publicly. Would I vote for Ron DeSantis? Maybe, with the way that he handled the pandemic in Florida. And I know that is also somewhat divisive, but I'm just speaking for myself here. But I think the bigger threat to America, and as I tweeted this at him, the bigger threat to America is online echo chamber pander handlers on either side of the aisle. Because there's a fucking lot of them. Some lean left, some lean right. Clearly, Brooklyn Dad Defiant leans left. But here's some more of the tweets that he's put out there. I will never vote for a Republican. You? Well, what if Hitler was running against a Republican? How would you know? It's one of those grand statements that you put out there. You expect people to pat you on the back, and you expect people on the other side of the aisle to retweet you, to talk shit about you. And in doing so, you build a massive following through Twitter's algorithm, which rewards engagement. And a voice like this, who is putting out, honestly, nothing of value to society, becomes amplified, and all of a sudden becomes something that people look to, I guess, know what they're supposed to believe. And we talk all the time about people being dangerous online and disinformation and misinformation. What the fuck is this? Just tell me what it is. And again, there are people like this on the right side of the aisle too. But what does this person do? And I'm so glad that I don't live on Twitter as many others in my industry do. Because I think it's just a fucking terrible place. It's not good for discourse. It's 280 characters or less at all times. This shit like that, it blows up. And there's a part of me that's jealous that that kind of engagement happens. But there's another part of me that's a little bit concerned that somebody could just throw shit out there that, like, really doesn't have a lot of substance behind it, and they know exactly what's going to happen. Let's get some other tweets here. You can watch and read them yourself at twitch.tv/Gallant says, youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Here's another one. Good morning and happy Tuesday. This is from today. To everyone who is ready to watch President Biden deliver the State of the Union tonight and watch conservatives squirm while he explains why his administration is the most legislatively successful in modern history. How do you prove that? How do you prove that last part? That's all I want to know. How do you prove that it's the most legislatively successful in modern history? What is modern history? How far back are we going? You can put stuff out there on social media. It'll blow up. It'll be amplified. And some people are just going to take that as fact. Why? Why should they? Who the fuck is this guy? He's a dad? He's got a blog? Look, tonight's going to suck. I'm probably not going to watch the State of the Union because I don't think it matters. A president is going to tell us that things are great. Here's what we're going to do next year. That's what always happens. Then you have a rebuttal from the opposite side of the aisle. It's not for me. Because again, it sort of lends itself to the continuous divide that we have between both sides with two people who are always going to say, la, 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 and shove their hands in their ears. I hate it. It bums me out. It really does. I'm not going to act like I'm some sort of smart person politically, but I will say that shit like this does not help us. This is just pandering to your echo chamber. And there are people, again, on the right who do the exact same thing. Here's another tweet. Okay, what's the next stupid thing that Republicans will choose to focus their fake outrage on now? To an extent, that's fair. That's fair. But I feel like the other side of the aisle does that too. There are no wrong answers. The crazier, the better. Okay, so now you're just portraying people on the other side who maybe you could actually change the minds of some that they're just piece of shit assholes. And I just don't like that there are people out there that get a big following by intentionally being divisive. You know, people said that about President Trump. I think people have said that from time to time about President Biden. And I get it. I mean, you're always going to be pandering to your political base a little bit, but I really wish that there were people out there that would be amplified and they know how to compromise, I guess. They have beliefs that aren't just one team or the other team, the left or the right, as if the left or the right applies to everyone universally, every single opinion that's held by the left, every single opinion that's held by the right. Like, there's this like teamsmanship to it, and it bums me out. It really does. And I hate that these tweets just keep on popping up on my timeline. So we'll have more next week. Maybe I'll go to the right side of it for next week, but this is something I wanted to get off my chest. I'm so fucking tired of seeing this guy's Twitter on my account. And I mean, I guess I block him, but I don't want to give him the satisfaction, not that he would care. He's got way bigger following than me, but like, people like this don't help us out. They don't. I suppose that they cover things from one political lens, and you know, obviously there's another side that does this. And my God, here I am, just like fair and balanced this entire time. But I fucking hate accounts like that. Anyway, want to talk about something else? Yeah, let's talk about sports. There was an interesting piece that came out on ESPN that had to do with somebody that I used to cover, Russell Wilson, and also someone that I used to work with, Jake Heaps. How many of you guys remember that I used to work at ESPN? What was the station name? They changed their name. 710 ESPN Seattle. Sorry, I didn't remember it off the top of my head. I saw this article pop up yesterday. Sean Payton, Russell Wilson's quarterback coach, won't be in facility. It reads, Inglewood, Colorado. Sean Payton's formal introduction as Denver Broncos coach Monday touched on the importance of keeping an open mind on players, a promise of discipline, an eye for details, and a focused pursuit of winning that is not for everybody. And perhaps nothing punctuated all of it more than Payton's steadfast belief in the improvement quarterback Russell Wilson can make and how Payton expects Wilson as well as the rest of the Broncos to make that improvement. Asked if Wilson could continue to have a personal quarterback coach, Jake Heaps, as well as other support to work with the quarterback in the building, Payton was clear on where he stood. Let's play the clip on Twitter right now.
On the 30-second
Coach,
clock.
Hang on a second. I gotta Once again, the audio. I always find a way to fuck up the audio on this thing. So bear with me for a second, and let's try this one again.
On the 30-second
Coach,
clock.
Russell Wilson had a personal coach, Jake Heaps, in the building with access who wasn't on the staff.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that.
How do you feel about players having their own people off the staff in the building, access to the players?
Yeah, that's foreign to me. That's not going to take place here. I mean, I'm unfamiliar with it, but our staff will be here, our players will be here, and that'll be it.
Doesn't sound like Jake Heaps is going to be allowed in the building. Now, Payton's responding to it on the fly, and I imagine if there is actual discourse between Russell Wilson and Jake Heaps, that there's a chance, Russell Wilson and Sean Payton, that there's a chance that Jake could still be in the building. And honestly, I hope that Jake still gets to go in the building because I do consider Jake to be a friend, and I enjoyed working with him at 710 ESPN Seattle. He chose to go with Russell Wilson to Denver. Wasn't allowed to continue doing things on the radio side of things. I don't want to dive into that. All I'm saying is that this is going to be really interesting when it comes to Russell Wilson because this is, I think, a moment where Russ has to be humble. Is he capable of that? Because I think, like a lot of quarterbacks, Russ has a massive ego on him. And is someone who's constantly thinking about his legacy and how people are going to remember him. Now, from this tweet right here, at Danger Russ Wilson, excited to get to work, fired up. Congrats, Coach Sean Payton. But this is a different situation than Russ has really been with before because in Seattle, there was this idea that Pete Carroll had all the say and was holding Russell Wilson back. That will not be the case with Sean Payton just because of the way things went last year. Sean Payton has all the power in Denver right now. And since he has all the power, he could perhaps tell Russell Wilson, look, dude, like, you're working with me, you're working with my quarterback coach, and that's fucking it. And I wonder if Russ is going to take that. He has to, just based off of the way things have been set up. The Broncos traded a lot for Sean Payton in addition to Russ. And I feel like they are more likely to stick with Sean Payton for the foreseeable future than they are with Russell Wilson, where it does feel like next year is going to determine a whole lot. Is Russ going to humble himself? Is he going to take a step back? Is he actually going to be someone who defers to Sean Payton when it feels like over the last couple of years, he was trying to get more and more power, more and more say in what he did. And he certainly has a couple of bodies in his wake. Brian Schottenheimer, maybe less so Shane Waldron, other coaches, people who were working with him for a while, all of a sudden they're not there, and you're like, okay, well, you're running out of people to blame here. People assumed that Pete Carroll and the Seahawks would fail this past season if Russ wasn't there. I know I did, but they played pretty damn well this past season. Life and Sports Talk with Jake asks, hey, I never heard your perspective on the whole beef with Wilson and Carroll. To me, Wilson was the problem 100%. Honestly, if you listen to me on the daily basis that I was on 710 ESPN Seattle, you would have heard me say often, one, you don't know what you've got until it's gone when you've got a great head coach like Pete Carroll, someone who was in Houston and saw what happened when Bill O'Brien amassed all the power that he had. There are very few things on Pete Carroll's record in Seattle that would point to this guy doesn't know what he's doing. And Russ did a lot of implying of that through third parties. I thought he kind of did it like a pussy. Hey, you're going to call somebody out, do it directly. Don't use your agent to do it. Don't use Colin Cowherd to do it. Speak your mind. I know you want everyone to love you, but if you really want everything, the way to get everything is to just ask for it, demand it. And instead, I mean, he just kind of played this game in a way where Pete Carroll looked like the bad guy And by the way, credit to the Seahawks for never biting at all the stupid fucking rumor stories that came out. And Russ, like, looks totally innocent in all of it. And until he was traded, a lot of people didn't roll their eyes at everything that Russ was doing. I did. I was sick of it. I was sick of it. From the end of 2021, this woe is me bullshit while he was watching Patrick Mahomes run for his life in the Super Bowl, thinking to himself, like, yeah, this is me. Dude, you get sacked 40 times a year for a reason. You hold on to the ball too long. It's what makes you great. But to say, like, yeah, well, sometimes I throw some touchdowns when I extend plays. No fucking shit. But you also, at the same time, take sacks that you don't need to. And you make the life of your offensive lineman in front of you difficult from time to time. You got to be better. Let's shift from Russell Wilson and talk about something else. Geno Smith is the now quarterback of the Seattle Seahawks, and he was asked on Sirius XM NFL radio about this past year and his future in Seattle. Here is Geno.
I know you believed in yourself, but more importantly, I think the organization, the Seattle Seahawks organization, Pete Carroll, Snyder, everybody kept telling us, hey, we know what we have in Geno Smith. How much did you want to prove them right? And did you take that fuel with you into the season?
Yeah, you're right. I really wanted to prove those guys right. Coach Carroll, John Snyder, just how much faith they showed in me. Obviously trading away Russell Wilson, it had nothing to do with me, but, just trading away the franchise cornerstone for, 10 years and then, making the transition. And then a guy like myself who had been, written off.
Right.
Let's pause for a second with the Geno stuff. Does no one remember the DUI? Am I the only person that remembers the DUI within the past year? I mean, it's not just that the Seahawks had faith in him to step in after Russ was traded. And I know they talked up the idea of Drew Lock and Geno Smith competing with one another. It seems like it was always Geno's to lose. And honestly, with the way that he played at times in 2021 for an injured Russell Wilson, you could see why. There were moments where Geno Smith looked like the more capable quarterback in that season. There really were. But anyway, that the Seahawks had faith in him after that is really something, because I don't know if you guys have seen the arrest reports of when Geno Smith got that DUI, but I mean, he acted like a complete asshole. And we all do dumb things when we're drunk. But I'm surprised that did not become a bigger deal. Anyway, maybe it will this offseason. I suppose we're all moving on, and maybe he has improved himself as a person. But more Geno Smith with Sirius XM NFL Radio.
Been on the bench, and then, for them to see what the work that I've been putting in, because I have been putting in an immense amount of work, and behind the scenes, I do a lot behind the scenes, and, just for them to recognize that meant a lot to me. And when the season came, I knew what I was going to do. I feel like they did as well, but it just had to happen.
What now? You made a Pro Bowl. You set some records this year. Got some decisions and opportunities to come up. Have you guys sat down and talked with the organization yet about the future of Geno Smith? What's that been like so far? Or when does that process start for you?
Yeah, we've had talks, and we're in the process of getting all that settled right now. It's looking very good. We think we can get some things done, but obviously those things take time. And this is the process that I hate about the NFL, because I just want to play football. But it's a business as well, and so we got to take care of business, and then we'll get back to the football.
Okay, where do I get my shirt at from the? They wrote you off, but they don't write back. So where do I go to get my shirt at, Geno?
Hey, we got them. They'll be up on the website soon. We got them. We got it all trademarked, so we'll have it on the website. And
I gotta say, he should have had that done already, but he was focused on the season. I'll give him, I'm not gonna dump on his marketing ability and stuff, but you got to take advantage of the moment. The moment wasn't quite the same as it was in the first half of the year and the second half of the year, and I don't think it was Geno's fault that the Seahawks lost to the 49ers. I thought he actually had a really good first half against San Francisco, and he had some really good games this past season. But I do think that the Seahawks have to be really careful in this spot, because I think that there is a pretty definitive ceiling as far as where you can go as a team with Geno Smith. That's not to say that he's bad. Like, he had a really good year this past year. But do you believe that Geno Smith can get you past the first round of the playoffs or the second round of the playoffs? You do need to have a special quarterback. Sometimes that guy is not enough, as we're seeing with Justin Herbert right now with the Chargers. But do you want to lock yourself into a long-term deal with Geno Smith? And just making assumptions, and off the top of my head, I forget the contract that Ryan Tannehill got with the Tennessee Titans, but the Ryan Tannehill contract with Tennessee is probably the one that you should be looking at the most. The one that he signed a couple of years ago. 4 years, $118 million that runs through this season. Generally, though, when you see a 4-year deal, that means that it's like a 2-year deal as far as all the guarantees go. They all vary, but usually a team is going to protect itself in case of injury or in case of deterioration in play. 4 years, $118 million is ridiculous for someone like Geno Smith. It is. I think the Titans knew that it was somewhat ridiculous with Tannehill too, even though he did have some really good moments with Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. Now Arthur Smith turned that into a head coaching gig with the Atlanta Falcons, and Tannehill really hasn't looked the same since that moment in time. I guess you give a lot of credit to Shane Waldron and the Seahawks receivers and the supporting cast that he had offensively, the 2 rookie tackles that they had for what Geno Smith was able to do this past season. And I think you have to really think long and hard about whether or not you want to give this guy a long-term deal. To my knowledge, there is not a player on the Seattle Seahawks that needs to be given the franchise tag. That's just me, though. Because the one guy that I think you were concerned about was DK Metcalf. If I'm the Seahawks, I think I'm giving Geno Smith the franchise tag. What's he going to do about it? Is he going to hold out? He's going to not play? Is that going to hurt you so much? I think that's the best short-term play. And I don't mind spending whatever money it would be on Geno Smith for the 2023 season, if it's the franchise tag number. Let's look that up really quickly just to get the figure. Franchise tag 2023. We're talking like $32.4 million. $32.4 million. I feel like that's totally fair. Geno Smith earned that, but did he earn a long-term contract? I would argue the end of the season says no. I mean, I'm hesitant to even give him a 3-year deal. And maybe there's a way that you can give yourself a little bit more cap space now that it's clear that this organization is a good one still and that maybe free agents are going to want to join it. Maybe there's a way that you can space things out so that the money doesn't really hit the cap this coming season next. But I think the Seahawks should still be looking at quarterbacks, and I hope that they don't let a extension hamstring them from potentially looking for that next guy. The good news is that we have seen in the past with both John Schneider and Pete Carroll that they've signed quarterbacks during the offseason, drafted a guy, and gave the quarterback that they drafted the job before we even saw the guy that they signed in the offseason a snap. That's, of course, Matt Flynn. The Seahawks signed him to a 3-year, $20.5 million contract with $9 million guaranteed in 2012. Man, how numbers have changed, huh? That's almost a decade ago. And then they draft Russ, and Russ beat him. I'm curious about what the Seahawks are going to do here. I would tell them, do not give him a long-term extension. I just don't think you saw any good signs at the end of last year. Some YouTube comments, youtube.com/Paul Gallant, Life and Sports Talk with Jake with a bunch of comments. No Legion of Boom and Marshawn Lynch really showed who Russell Wilson was. To an extent, I do think at times the Legion of Boom was unfair with him, and that was on the outside looking in, and I can understand how his personality would have rubbed some the wrong way, but, I mean, there was no denying that, like, as he had more of an expansive role on the Seahawks offense, especially, what was it, the end of the 2015 season where he was lights out down the stretch, maybe it was the end of the 2016 season. There were a couple of moments where he showed, like, oh, yeah, this guy's really special. A Life and Sports Talk with Jake brings up Geno almost beat Pittsburgh. In Pittsburgh, there was that fumble. And then also says Jackson Njoku would be a good number 3 receiver for Geno at number 20. Give him more weapons. I'm not into the mock draft talk. You never know when a guy's going to fall. You never know how someone's going to get. Bob Halsey jokes, blow it up and start over with the Seahawks. It is crazy that they did not have to do that. All right, one last thing before we hit the road. And I have a take on something. Because I'm not sure what they're trying to do here. And I apologize for the potentially graphic picture you're about to see. Here's a picture of my Lord and Savior and Brady brand underwear. Brady underwear, the best decision you've ever made. Tom Brady wears our limited edition boxer brief in heathered crimson. Available now at bradybrand.com. Retirement never looked so good. So he took a selfie of himself sitting in a poolside bed, covering up his crotch and sitting over the edge of the bed. Okay, if you're advertising underwear, don't you have to show it? And I'm not asking to see it. I'm not asking to see it. But I feel like if you're going to advertise underwear, you actually got to show, like, how does it accentuate the bulge, right? Am I wrong here? That's just me. I also think it's weird to post selfies if you're a man. I really do. Unless you're doing it ironically or in a weird way, or if you're with a couple of other people. But a mirror selfie of yourself is about as fucking basic as it gets. It really is. It looks bad. It's so cringe. If any of your friends ever do it, you should destroy them. Destroy them and check that ego. We can't do this, men. We can't. It just does not look good. Anyway, that's going to wrap up today's edition of the Gallant Says podcast. We do this thing every single weekday from 1 to 1:30 Central Time live, twitch.tv/Gallant Says and youtube.com/Paul Gallant. Big thanks to everybody who tuned in. The show will be up in podcast form. Didn't post yesterday's. I didn't like yesterday's show. I apologize for that. But this podcast will be up Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Until tomorrow at about 1 o'clock, so long, farewell, and have yourselves a wonderful Tuesday.